Let's talk with airline crisis consultant Ken Jenkins. And Ken, I know you've done some stuff in the past with the missing Malaysia jetliner. So when you walk up to somebody, say I'm a relative, I'm grieving, I don't have a whole lot of closure, they haven't really discovered a whole lot, what do you tell me to help me find that closure?
Well, good morning, Vince. And first of all, let's define closure in this realm, and that there never is closure for the families of those impacted after an aviation disaster. There's healing. But the event never goes away in their mind. Memories of birthdays and Christmases and future events like that will always bring them back to that feeling of sadness and grief. It may dissipate over time, but it never goes away. There's not a lot that you can say that brings comfort, but there's a lot that you can do to help them through the difficult time. And one of the things that you're seeing in the news that AirAsia is doing a pretty good job of is keeping the families up to date with information and about debris being found, about what's going on for the search and recovery efforts and things of that nature, providing them a location where they can be away from the media and secure from the general public, access to spiritual care and child care so that they can ask questions and be someplace that's safe while they figure out what's going on in terms of, well, now we know as they found the wreckage during this type of event.
Talking to Ken Jenkins. He is an airline crisis consultant. And Ken, I'm hearing good stuff from you about AirAsia, so you think they've done a good job?
I think they've done a good job in comparison to other events we've seen in recent months. They certainly have been very forthcoming in setting up their emergency operations center very quickly at the board point of the flight. They had one at the off point of the flight. They had that secure area set up for families. They provided a passenger manifest and crew manifest very quickly, and they're taking care of those essential services, basic physiological needs that people need. So far, it looks like they have. They've been very quick to work with the families. Yes, sir.
It seems like they have done a good job and things are going well in terms of supplying the information. But how much do you think that AirAsia has actually been helped by the mistakes of the missing Malaysia jetliner?
Well, and of course not being there and working with AirAsia and not knowing what those conversations were in the last few months, most airlines stood up and took notice after Malaysia 370. And certainly may have revisited their emergency response plans. And with all due respect to Malaysia Airlines, they did their best with what they had in terms of information and trying to organize families to get information. Some of the missteps there wasn't entirely the airline's fault. But I certainly think AirAsia took advantage of being able to say, look, we don't want this to happen if we ever have an event. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm just glad that they're taking care of the families. It's such a horrific event to have to go through.
Absolutely.
And you certainly don't need any second assaults from the airline at this point.
But what's the next step here? Is it? I mean, when does the airline say, okay, not to sound callous, but we're done with you, this situation kind of resolved itself? And do you see perhaps some relatives maybe suing the airline?
Well, certainly from a litigation standpoint, I think at long term you'll see the litigation. But in the near term, if AirAsia's response and in Indonesia as a country's response is like the United States or even in Europe, what you'll be seeing over the next few days are family members will be asked to gather DNA samples possibly for the passengers on board. They may be asked to complete ante-mortem interview questionnaires, which will help with identification of loved ones. So that's the first step, is to identify the remains and then return them for burial. And then as things continue on from there, the airline will stay engaged with the family, typically through the burial, and then they will stay engaged through any type of financial expenses they may need to take care of the burial process, and then insurance processes kick in and things of that nature. So there's several weeks left to go for the airline to work with the family, and then long term, the airline will always have contact with the family through the litigation process.
Ken Jenkins, lots of great insight as to what's happening with the missing AirAsia jetliner. Looks like they now found it. Lots of debris being found there.